بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أفضل المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي وبعد. جزاكم الله خير for attending. I know it's Saturday, it's 9 a.m. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for attending here, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to open unto me to say that which is beneficial to us. Before I start, there is a saying that علم المنافق في لسانه وعلم المؤمن في عمله. The knowledge of a hypocrite is on his tongue, and the knowledge of a believer in his action. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us benefit of whatever we learn, and that we learn with the intent of acting. Ilm by itself is not the goal. Ilm is essential, knowledge is essential, but knowledge by itself, having a lot of knowledge, is not the goal. The goal is that I use this knowledge to change things, to act, right? To change internally, inwardly, and then change the outward reality of this world, inshallah. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make that class an agent for us to change. Before starting, I would say this topic is very dear for me, because I bear witness that it really changed me. This topic I'm speaking about today, this generation of Salahuddeen Al-Ayubi, it changed me personally as a person. It changed my character, it changed the way I relate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, my ilm. It opened unto me doors to learn about scholars and what they taught. It was transformative. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that it would do the same thing to you and give you hope amidst the chaos and the negativity that we live in the world today. Before I start the class, one thing I just always say, you notice the name of the class is very important. This is not Salahuddeen Al-Ayubi. You know, this is not a class about a superhero that appeared and then Muslims were weak, and then he came and then gathered the Muslims and liberated Jerusalem, defeated the Crusaders. Because when we teach about him, he's a great man, he's a great character, not only on the military sense, as we'll see, his character, his compassion, his devotion to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his relation with his scholars. He is really, I would say, a wali from awliya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Really something to study, right? But putting the class in that sense is not the right direction. Why? Because then everybody will be sitting waiting for what? We're waiting for Salahuddin to come. You know, the situation in Palestine is not good. Salahuddin comes, we win, right? This is not the message of this class. Salahuddin was not a superhero that just came and saved the Muslims. It was a whole generation. He was a representative. He was one man of an entire generation. It was the generation of Salahuddin that did this work. The men and the women, the old and the young, the knight and the scholar, all together. So the men around Salahuddin, from the scholars around him, from the knights around him, from the teachers, from the women around him, they were the agent of change. So the class is not about one person. And we really need to get out of this mentality that we study, you know, great Muslim superheroes as one person effort. It's a group of people. It's a collective effort. You know, when we ask today, you know, look at what's happening in Palestine. Tell me what I can do. Tell me what I can do, right? The question has a problem. The question is about what? Tell me what I can do. What's the correct question? Tell me what we can do. It's always I, by myself, I can't do anything. Unless we learn to work together, which we'll see. Unless we are in harmony and direct our effort in one direction, most time we don't produce much change, right? So this class is about the generation of Salahuddin. And before starting the class, I always started with an example that actually something that happened to me the first time I taught this class, maybe more than 10 years ago, right? And this situation has a spiritual meaning that I would like to point out before going into the topic. I was one time after work, right, you know, lunch break, right, and I was going to the masjid to pray, and I'm sitting in my car, driving, right, and, you know, there is a traffic light, it's red, I stop, and then here comes a car beside me, and I hear loud music, and there's two girls there, you know, like doing what they're doing, singing, and, you know, like dressed whatever, right, and I was like, khalas, let them be, right? And then all of a sudden, one of them opens the window and then yells at me, Hassan, hi. And I was like, Yani, what is, who's that? You know, right? And then the traffic is green and they went. And I was like, what on earth was this, right? And it was a clue. Then next day, Lunch break, I was going to get my lunch. It was Quiznos at the time. I go to the same time, take the tuna sandwich. I go there, and the girl serving the tuna sandwich said, hey, you didn't recognize me yesterday. It was us, me and my friend. That's how they knew me. Every time I would go get my lunch, so you didn't recognize us. What's the lesson here? If you were sitting beside me in that car, and you saw those two girls dressed however they were, and they say, Hassan, hi, what would you think about me? Right? What is the lesson? You would project yourself onto me. If you were a person that parties every Saturday, parties every Sunday, and see this situation, what will you assume? I know what you were doing last Saturday, right? But if you know me, if you're the person that knows me personally and comes and prays here with me in Salat al-Isha, and say, that's strange. Maybe he was doing da'wah to them one day and that's how they recognize them, right? You get the idea? Now here's another question. What if it was my wife sitting beside me? Right? And I always say that. I would go and tell her, honey, no, those two girls? I know what happened. They're the two girls from Quiznos. And the answer will be, is that why you go there every day? You never win, right? What's the idea here? A spiritual concept. We see things the way we are. We see things through the mirror of our heart. Right? If my heart is clouded, if I have vices, I tend to see everybody the way I am. I project myself onto other people. And therefore, whenever we study history, right, it's very important what book do we read. If you use secular books written by Western people that are going to write about Salahuddin, guess what? They will project their own character, they will project their own ideas onto him. They don't understand. So they will say, oh, no. Salahuddin was actually using scholars. It was a trick. He used scholars to propagate his message. He's all, because what they know is what capitalism. Everybody must be this way. The fact that somebody isn't, the fact that somebody is interested on the hereafter, on the they can't fathom this, right? So the source, when we study history, period, especially Islamic history, the first thing I want to tell you, be careful with the sources, right? So, alhamdulillah, the first thing I would say about this class, when we want to study about the generation of Salahuddin Al-Ayubi, the sources that I use in this class are mainly, I use, yes, secular sources, but I use sources that are from our Ummah, Islamic sources. We are fortunate that at the time of Salahuddin, great scholars lived, and they were eyewitness to what happened. And those great scholars later on, so they're scholars, good Muslims, purification of the soul, they have tazkiyah, right? And they are the ones that are eyewitness, and they are writing what happened. One of the greatest references that I always use, and I consider it very credible, is the reference written by Salahuddin's teacher himself. Salahuddin, he loved ilm, he loved to study, but he's in the battlefield most of the time, right? So he asked one of the great hadith scholars, a scholar, said, please accompany in all my travels. So every day, after the battles and what have you, you're always with me and we sit and study. This scholar name is Ibn Shaddad, great scholar of hadith. So Ibn Shaddad now, not only teaching Salahuddin, he's accompanying him. He's with him in all the battles. After Salahuddin died, he wrote a book that's translated in English, Al-Nawadir al-Sultaniyya wal-Ma'athir al-Yusufiyya, the rare and excellent history of Salahuddin. And you can buy this book. So that's a scholar, and why is that important? He was with him. So he will not only tell you the events, he will tell you what the Sultan was thinking, the letters he wrote, what did he do at night, the dua that he used, transactions that happened. You would really get to know the Sultan in a very personal way. We have great scholars like Ibn Kathir. He wrote a book of history. Ibn al-Athir wrote a book of history. They were in that time. So using the Muslim sources, that's the material that primary we're going to use for this class, inshallah. So I have a list of references. If you're interested, depending on your level of interest, and I have the books here. If you, after we have a break, feel free to come and browse. And there are some written by Muslims, some written by secular, and I can give you like my 2 cents on each one of them. What is good for you, right? So I'll give you this set of references, and the books are here. So if you're interested, please come and take a look at them. So the main thing I would say, and again we'll jump to the topic after that, that the way this presentation is based on, like, I would call 3 layers, right? If you read Arabic, one of the best references is a book written by Dr. Majid Al-Kilani. It's called هكذا ظهر جيل صلاح الدين وهكذا حررت القدس. This book is about what? It's not about the battles, it's about how did the generation of Salah ad-Din appear? Who were the scholars of the time? What did they teach? How did the reform happen, right? So there is a book also written by Dr. Salabi. It's translated in English, 3 volumes, very detailed, same topic, right? But under those are history books, Muslim history books, basically Ibn Kathir, Ibn al-Athir, and Mir'at al-Zaman, those are books of history that I used. But at the very bottom, and this is important, I'll take one example. There were books written by, again, people that were eyewitness with Salah ad-Din. One of them was the scribe of Salah ad-Din. And he wrote this is the person that Salah ad-Din would order him to write letters. When he, right? And he's a scholar and he was with Salah ad-Din. He wrote a book, right, about Nuruddin Zinki and Salah ad-Din. It's very big. In it are the details of the details, the letters. For example, what was the first khutbah when Salah ad-Din opened the Aqsa Mosque? And can you imagine? Imagine if Muslims liberate Al-Aqsa and you are there to attend the first khutbah in the Aqsa Mosque. What was it? What was said? See, we have access to this. So this book is extremely detailed, very rich, right? So that is a source that, alhamdulillah, we use in this class, inshallah. طيب, khair, bismillah. What is our intention? We say, نَمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Actions are by intentions. Why are you here today? What is your intent of attending this class? It's very important to set that straight. And one of the best things that I saw is Salah ad-Din's teacher, Ibn Shaddad, the hadith scholar. When he wrote the book about Salah ad-Din, what was his intention? He wrote something very powerful. He wrote, and it's here, but I'll say it in my own words. He said the following. This is a scholar. So he used to teach people about what? He used to teach about the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Abu Bakr and Umar, and he used to get reactions like what? People would say, yeah, this was the time back then. Yeah, it's not practical nowadays. Did it really happen? Is that maybe it didn't happen? So, for example, when I tell you Uthman ibn Affan, right, great, companion of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. One day, he entered the masjid. This is narrated many times by many people, and he wanted to pray qiyam. So he entered the masjid. Allahu Akbar. He prayed 1 rak'ah. You know what he did in that 1 rak'ah? He finished the entire Quran. What? So when I hear this, many people, and I've tried that. Yeah, it's not possible. 1 juz, it takes 1 hour. The Quran is 30 juz. There is not enough time. No. This report is not authentic. No. And that was Uthman ibn Affan back then. Nowadays, I don't think it can happen. Times change. You know what I mean? So in a way, many people get the sense of what those were the golden days of Islam, but the modern reality, it doesn't work. So Ibn Shaddad is saying what? He lived in such a difficult time that he said, when I used to tell people about those stories, people wouldn't believe me. He said, I myself had doubts. Is that really possible? Till I saw Salahuddeen Al-Ayubi and the men around him. I saw such dedication, such sincerity, such worship of Allah, such courage, such generosity that made me see the reality of Islam. Those things I used to read about in the past, I saw them with my own eyes. So I know, I'm confident not only that those things happened in the past, they can happen in our day. And therefore, he says, I wanted to write that book to inform people about what I saw. The things I saw were so splendid, so magnificent, it's almost like miracles. He said, I couldn't help but tell people about it. And then he says something really powerful. And I want people to know the Sultan Salah ad-Din so that they can continuously make dua for him, for what he did to this. That was his intent of writing the book. Right? So it's very powerful. And wallahi, it is very true. One of the purpose of this class, for me and for you, we live in a day where Muslims, you see our situation across the world. And some of us say, Ya akhi, it's hopeless. I think we're in the weakest spot ever. When you look to our history back in the day, we had the Abbasi Khilafah, the Amawi Khilafah, we were on top, we were superpower, we were strong. If Salah ad-Din was only here, Now, we are so weak, I think we are in the weakest point in our history. I beg to differ with you. The first lesson we're going to learn today, if that's how we think, it's wrong. When you study history, you will see that Muslims passed in times that are worse than today. The biggest challenge of Salahuddin Al-Ayubi was not the Crusaders. The Crusaders it's unified Europe, 22 countries that came to invade, Jerusalem. That was not his biggest challenge. What do you think his biggest challenge was? The Muslims. The Muslims we were in such a state. If you were to look at it, wallahi, you will say, Alhamdulillah, today we're much better. It was much worse back then. Much, much worse. And the purpose of this class is what? If it was that bad and we recovered, rest assured, we can recover from today's reality. Now, the more important thing is what? How did we recover? How did the Muslim Ummah across a span of 50 years to 100 years change from a state? You will be shocked. Completely terrible on all domains in terms of Iman, ideology, economy, military. How did they transform to such a state of having Salahuddin and a revival and scholarship? Who did that? What did they do? What did they teach? So maybe if we get lessons from there, we know what we need to do today. We know that the process of change is a long-term process, but how does it start? What did they do? What did they teach? The teachings of those scholars, the teachers of Salahuddin Al-Ayubi, are present today in between our hands. What transformed that generation can transform us if we access the same knowledge and act in the same way. So that's one of the purposes of the class. So the class is not only about the military history or the biographies of Salahuddin, also the scholars involved and the process of change as well, inshallah. طيب, خير. Bismillah. And again, you can have many, many intentions about why you attend this class. It's maybe because I want to be more steadfast. Maybe I want my character to change. Maybe I want a role model for myself and my kids. But we have to have some intent. Why are you here today? What do you want to learn? And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us what we intend, inshallah. Make our intentions pure and sincere for Him. طيب, Bismillah. So now, inshallah, let's dive in, inshallah, into the class. Bismillah. طيب, I'm going to divide this class into basically two sections, right? One is the following. We're not going to start with the Crusades, right? And the Crusades came and then Salahuddin came. No, we're going to start 100 years before the Crusade. Why? I want you to see the state of the Muslims. Before the Crusaders come, why did we perform so badly? How were we doing? Now, that part that we covered, especially in the first lecture, is just a warning. It's very negative. So sometimes I'm afraid people will feel we're already feeling bad. This will make us feel worse, right? But what's the purpose of this? Again, please keep that in your mind as I'm speaking about this first part. If we were that bad before and we recovered, Alhamdulillah, we're not that bad today and we can recover today. So the first thing, we think it's bad today. I want you to see how it was back then and compare, right? And then the next part will be what the process of change, the agonies of change, right? Which is the middle part. And then the appearance of Nuruddin Zenki and Salahuddin and what he did and his struggle again with the Muslims and then with the Crusaders and how he built a nation that lasts, for centuries to come, inshallah, by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this, inshallah, is our schedule. Today we'll go halfway. Maybe if we have time, maybe we'll see the appearance of Salahuddin today. If not, then tomorrow, inshallah. Right, Bismillah. So don't, when we start, don't say, where is Salahuddin? This is you will not appreciate him till you appreciate the challenges he had to face. Right, that's why we're doing this, inshallah, Bismillah. Right. First of all, the arena. So the first part, I just want to describe the state of the Muslims at the day. Especially not in India, not in Spain, where the actions will happen. So as you know, when we speak about Salahuddin and the Crusades, where is it centered? Jerusalem, right? Aqsa. So our arena is the Middle East, the area of Egypt. So you have Egypt, you have Sham, modern-day Syria and Jordan. You have Al-Hijaz, modern-day Saudi Arabia, and you have Iraq, right? This is where the events will happen. All the events will be centered around Jerusalem. The basic players, as you'll see, is Egypt and Syria and Iraq. very similar to today, right? This is the basic three players that are there, right? Type. So to start, inshallah, let's see how the Muslims was, I mean, back in the day. So 100 years before Salahuddin Al-Ayubi, what dynasty was it? What Khilafah was it? Right? It was the Abbasi Khilafah. Where is the Abbasi Khilafah centered? And where is the center of the Khilafah of the Muslims back in the day? It's Baghdad, right? Egypt comes later, right? After Salahuddin, the Khilafah moves to Egypt, very interestingly, because of what Salahuddin did, right? But the Khilafah was centered in Baghdad. Baghdad used to be the capital of the world, where Harun al-Rashid, the great Khalifa of the Muslims, used to rule. And the Muslims were all the way from Spain, all the way till China, the most powerful, nation that existed, not only in a military sense, but as a civilization, right? It was the golden age with libraries, bathrooms everywhere, public facilities. Baghdad was a glamorous city. The century before Salahuddin Al-Ayubi, things were different. The Khilafah was at its weakest point. The Abbasi Khalifa was in his palace, and his authority did not basically exceed that. Baghdad was in decay, half destroyed. Thugs and thieves used to take, some of the, downtown LA. You get the picture, you're like, you go there and it's like, so that Baghdad used to have like sectarian violences. The Hanabila, the Hanbali madhab and the Shafi'i madhab used to fight with each other, burn mosques to each other. It was not in a good state. There is a lot of violence, there is a lot of gangs and thugs, and things were in decay. So those golden days of the Khilafah wasn't there anymore. And as described by Ibn al-Jubayr, he says, even the state of people. He said the people that used to live in this area at that time, they were almost like the days of Jahiliyyah. They're not very knowledgeable. All what they're concerned about is what? Drinking, having parties, more money, cheating. They were so much involved in the life of this world. He said to the extent, he writes this, that I think there is no Islam left except in Morocco, the areas of Morocco, and but those eastern districts of Baghdad, it looks like Muslims are back in the day of Jahiliyyah, right? Now, from a political perspective, something interesting happened. The Muslims used to be unified, but unfortunately, people started dividing. And before the Crusaders came, just the area of Sham, modern-day Syria, was divided into 22 different nations. So Aleppo, Halab is one nation by itself. Damascus is one nation by itself. Al-Mosul, it was that much divided. Now, one of the biggest things that happened, Egypt, which again is a major country, separated completely from the Abbasi Khilafah, right? But one of the biggest challenges that happened in that time was not on the political realm. Yes, in political-wise, now the Muslims are split and divided and fighting each other. But the one main challenge happened at the time. What was it? The rise of a new sect, if you will. This is an ideology. What we call it Dawla al-Fatimiyya, or the Ismailis, or Dawla al-Ubaidiyya, right? We'll call them the Ismailis. Who are they? It's a sect, meaning what? It's routed in ideology. So the Ismailis, or the Fatimis, they're a group of people that they say that they're from the Shia. But even the modern day Shia, like they say, they're not from us. They're such deviants that they can't be. And I'll just tell you what they did. So they believe what? We have an imam. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the Quran, He sent the Quran, He sent the Prophet from the descendants of the Prophet, we have an imam, right? And this imam knows the unseen. This imam is the light of God on earth. He knows everything. He knows all the books. The Quran was for the companions. But now, you don't need that. You have the imam, right? If you want a fatwa and you want a fiqh, why fiqh? You go ask him, because he knows the unseen. He has all the knowledges. So the imam, some of them believe that the imam is, the light of God in communication with God. I've seen an Ismaili person modern day. That was in Austin. I met an Ismaili person. I was talking to him, and then he showed me a picture. Said, look, of their imam today. Said, this, showing you the picture of his imam. Said, yes, who's that? And you know what he told me? Astaghfirullah. I said, this is Allah. And I was like, astaghfirullah, you can be a Muslim. I mean, if you're going to start, the Allah comes into the, this business of Jesus and three into one, and that's so far, right? So far, right? So they really glorify their imam so much. And he has knowledge of the unseen, and he's the light of God. And therefore, you go ask him anything, and therefore he can change legislation. So for example, as Muslims, what is our zakah? 2.5%. Well, the Imam changed that for them. He decided zakah from now on is 12.5%. He's the Imam, he can change things. You see the danger of that? And here's the best part of it. Who do you pay your zakah for? The poor, the needy, right? You have the sources. He said, no, it's changed. Who do you pay your zakah for? One source only. Who do you guess that is? Us. I'm not joking. This is up till today. It's real, right? If you go to the Ismailis today, they're a very minor sect. Remember, they think of the Imam as what? The light of God, the one that's guiding the Muslims, right? The one that's defending Islam. Where do you think that today's Imam lives? Saudi? France. So the defender of Islam, the one that's, did you ever hear him speak about Palestine or anything? Right? His daughter is married to a non-Muslim. Yeah, divinely guided Imams, right? But back in the day, today it's a very small sect. Back in the day, something dangerous happened. They tricked people. Their message was, this is the light of God. He's the Imam. There is so much oppression in the Muslim land. You're oppressed, brothers. You see the rulers are bad. When the Imam comes and the Mahdi comes, things will change. Muslims will be strong. All the oppression will be lifted. We are punished by God. But if you take the Imam and follow his guidance, justice will prevail. You see the message? They used philosophy. They studied philosophy and used philosophy to propagate their madhab, right? So what happened, unfortunately, this ideology, and again, I have to go fast in this class, they succeeded in going to Morocco, North Africa, and actually people started believing in them. And they started to form a base. And once they started taking a base in Morocco, the things they did for Ahl Sunnah was terrible. First, I'll just give you some examples. Remember, they said scholars are the enemy of the state. You don't need those scholars. The Imam Malik, because most of the North Africans are Malikis, said, you don't need al-Muwatta of Imam Malik. You don't need Imam Malik. You have the Imam. Anybody who's reading or ruling by Maliki fiqh will be punished and, imprisoned, if not killed. Salat al-Tahajjud, banned. Worse, they would get some animal heads, like cows, and they would hang them on the masajid, and astaghfirullah, and they would write the names of the companions under them. They went, Abu Bakr, astaghfirullah, Umar, Aisha, they bashed them in public. Scholars are forced to write on their houses insulting statement against the companions. You have to. If a scholar speaks against them, tortured in public, right? So it was a very oppressive dynasty, if you will. And unfortunately, it took North Africa, right? So you can see this is not a political movement. This is now, you're messing the ideology of people. One of the worst things they did is they said the Quran, okay, I'll tell you something about the Quran. The Quran has two meanings, the apparent meaning and the hidden meaning. Batini meaning. So for example, whenever the Quran says the word al-Kaaba, it means Ali ibn Abi Talib. When it speaks hellfire, they put a dictionary. This word means this word means this word. Now go ahead and read the Quran. You see how deviant and serious that is, right? So they started changing a lot of the creed of the people. People were confused at best, right? So the worst part about the Ismaili, they started expanding. And I said they started in North Africa, but their eyes turned toward Egypt. And they eventually conquered Egypt. Egypt fell to the Ismailis. Once they took Egypt, they did two things. One, what is the biggest religious establishment in Egypt today? Al-Azhar, right? Who built the Azhar? It was the Ismailis. They built Al-Azhar, and I want you to see how they're thinking. They want a big university to do what? To propagate their creed. So they established Al-Azhar as a mosque and the university to do what? To prepare dua, to propagate the message of the Ismaili method, to teach this message, right? Now they started closing all other schools as much as they can, fighting all other scholars. You see what they're doing, right? So this is one. Second, the capital of Egypt today. What's the capital of Egypt? I know I'm from Egypt, but Cairo. What's the name in Arabic? Al-Qahira. What does it mean? You know Ismillah Al-Qahir? Al-Qahar. Qahar is what? The irresistible. The one that you can't stand against. So they wanted to build a city, their capital, and they wanted to be what? Irresistible. They will never fall down. So they went to astrologists. That's how you know the Islamic ruling regarding al-munajjimin and the stars and right? But they believed in that among their things. So they went to astrologists and told them, we want to build a city that will never be defeated. And the astrologist told them, well, there is this star by the name of Al-Qahir. If you build the city at the time that this star appears in this location, the city will never fall down. And they believed that. And they built the city of Al-Qahira. Right? So Egypt became what? Their station. I want you to Egypt. Can you imagine Egypt falling to such kind of a dynasty? Can you imagine living for 2 centuries under such a dynasty where you don't have access to scholars, where Salat al-Tahajjud is banned, when you don't have, what will happen to your kids and your grandkids? Who will teach them? You see what happened? So confusion started to happen on what? On a very base level. Egyptians, I'm speaking about the farmers, that you can't blame them. Living two centuries under this dynasty, the creed is messed up, right? And they really believed in the Ismaili, Khalifa and the Ismaili Imam, and he's the light of God, and and lots of rituals and things, So they fell for that, right? Now, here is the worst part. They did not stop in Egypt. What will be their next step? If you look to the map. So they took Egypt. They started going further. So actually, they went and took Syria too, at one point. The third point was what? Hijaz, Mecca and Medina. And they started to aspire, we want to take what? This is Mecca, this is Medina. Do you think they succeeded in taking Mecca and Medina? The answer is yes, they did. They went, Mecca and Medina fell to the Fatimids and the Dawla al-Ubaydiyya. That's how bad things were. Right? Now, among the things that happened, and I know this is a very dark chapter in the history, but it's good to know. One of their leaders, Abu Tahir al-Janabi, the Ibn Kathir writes this in his book of history, right? The Ismailis started fighting among each other, sects formed. One of them, their leader, went into Mecca. And he found pilgrims, people doing Hajj. Ibn Kathir narrates, says he entered and he started killing all the pilgrims around the Kaaba. And then he started saying, Ibn Kathir narrates this, أين الطير الأبابيل؟ أين الحجارة من سجيل? You know what he's referring to? Abraha? Saying, where is it? Nothing is happening to me. And then he starts saying the following. Astaghfirullah for that. Ibn Kathir narrates this. أنا الله أنا أنا الله وبالله أنا أحيي الناس وأفنيهم أنا. I am God and by God, me. I'm the one that gives life to people and I'm the one that takes life from people. He killed the Muslims in Mecca and he took the bodies and he threw them in the well of Zamzam. Is it that bad today? You see what I'm saying? This is how it was. And nobody can do anything. The worst part, even worse than this, the Kaaba, the black stone. He took the black stone away from the Kaaba and went to his city, built another Kaaba, put the black stone there. If you want to come to me. For 20 years, there is no Hajj. It's history. This was the state of the Muslims. And again, why am I telling you this? Look at how bad it was. So when you look at today's reality, we're not that bad. We recovered back then. Trust me, we can recover today. Right? You get the idea? Right? And the idea is how, right? So now the Ismailis are it's a very serious threat. Finally, their final stop was what? Baghdad, the capital. This is what's left. And they succeeded in converting one of the wazirs in Baghdad. His name is Al-Basasiri, and I'll go quickly. He converted to the Ismaili madhab. He made a revolt in Baghdad. He revolted. He captured, the other wazir, did what he did to him, captured the Khalifa, took over Baghdad. And it seemed at that point that it's over. If the Ismailis take everything, it was dark. But then a light of hope came in. Right? Hope came in a rise of a new power. Right? A new power came and saved Islam. A new group of people, new converts to Islam, not Arabs. that were still zealous. They were still Sunnis. They were still fighting for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are the ones that came to the rescue. Who do you think this group is, by the way? The Seljuk Empire. This, you know the Seljuks? That's before the Turkish Empire. Like the Turkish is like, maybe 3 centuries after that, right? So the Seljuks are a new group of converts, right? They were, Central Asia, right, in that area. And they were very zealous. When they saw Baghdad and the Khalifa fell, they couldn't take it. So they attacked, right? They restored the Khilafah back. They kicked out this coup. They recovered everything in Baghdad. They took the area of Iraq. But then the Khalifa was a puppet in their hand. The Khalifa stays in the palace, but the real ruler is the Seljuk Sultan, right? Now, the Seljuk Sultan, the real point of change, the birth of change, the thing that will lead to the appearance of Salahuddin happened then. This is maybe a century, or like at least a century before Salahuddin, roughly, right? About 40, 50 years before the Crusaders even came. The one person that I want you to remember the name of from this lecture, the one person that really shaped the path of this ummah, right, was not the Sultan, was the Wazir of the Seljuk Empire. A great man by the name of Nizam al-Mulk. Nizam al-Mulk was the Wazir, right? And Nizam al-Mulk was a statesman and is a very visionary person, right? So he came, he saw the danger of the Ismailis in Egypt, and Sham, and he understood we have to fight them. But he said the following: this fight is not a fight in the military and political realm only. The Ismailis have Al-Azhar. And it's an intellectual fight. They're messing up the creed of people. People are confused. What I need to reform, and I want you to notice this, I need to reform the hearts of people. Not only politically, and he had a strong army, but said, no. It has to be at the grassroots. How can I do that? He started establishing something which was, at the time, transformative, what we call a Nizamiyya school. So in every big city, Baghdad, Samarkand, every big city in the kingdom, he would establish a huge school with a huge endowment. And then he said the following: the scholars of the Ummah, he raised their status. He contacted the top scholars of the time, invited them to teach in his schools, and offered great scholarship. If anybody wants to study, I cover all your expenses, all expenses paid. So if you have kids, you want them to study Islam, send them to the Nizamiyya school. We'll take care of them from hospitals, food, dormitories, teachers, all expenses paid. His idea was, what? I need a new generation of scholars. So the reform happened through schools. Now, many secular books, like are present nowadays, and they discuss the history of the Crusades, and then the Mongols, what they did. And in one of the books I was reading, after long analysis, the author concludes, the madrasa saved Islam. I want you to remember that. The madrasas saved Islam. Those schools that Nizam al-Mulk did, they are the reason why we have Salahuddin. They are the reasons why we have Nuruddin Zinki. Right? One of the things that happened, and I have to point to this, so basically now he has the top scholars of the time, people like Imam al-Qushayri, al-Juwayni, those you don't have to remember the names. If you're into scholars, you know who I'm speaking about, top scholars of the time. An interesting story happened at the time. There was a righteous man with 2 kids, Ahmed and Muhammad, a righteous person. And he was about to die. So he went to one of his friends and said, I'm going to pass away, please take care of my kids. I want raise them to be good Muslims. Right? And here is all the money I have. And his friend took that, and he said, okay, fine, don't worry about it. The man passes away. He takes the 2 kids, spends on them, teaches them Quran, but the money runs out. And they're still young. So that man goes to those kids, Ahmed and Muhammad, and tells them, I ran out of money. And your dad wanted you to be good, righteous Muslims, but how can I do that? There is only one thing left for me to do. Why don't you go to the Nizamiyya school of Nizam al-Mulk in Baghdad? They will spend on you. They'll take care of you. And at the same time, you will learn about Islam. You learn all the sciences. Nizamiyya school was not only the Islamic studies, it's chemistry, biology, it's a wholesome thing, right? Logic, philosophy, you name it, right? So go there, they'll teach you Islam and they'll spend on you. One of those people, the young Muhammad, grew up at the feet of great scholars. He grew up to be one of the top scholars of the Ummah. This is Muhammad ibn Muhammad ibn Muhammad ibn Ahmad al-Ghazali. This is Imam al-Ghazali. The reason we had Imam al-Ghazali is in the Nizamiya school. Imam al-Ghazali is instrumental in the appearance of Salahuddeen Al-Ayubi. As a matter of fact, when you read about Salahuddin, you see one of the books that Salahuddin ordered. This book should be everywhere and everybody should read it. The Alchemy of Happiness, written by Imam al-Ghazali. The students of Imam al-Ghazali are the teachers of Salahuddin Al-Ayubi, and we'll show that, right? Imam al-Ghazali, one of the very first things that he did, he was a very sincere person, very powerful intellect. They call him the proof of Islam. You know what it means? He was such an embodiment of what Islam is. His arguments were so powerful. If anybody has a doubt in Islam, go meet Imam al-Ghazali, you will know that Islam is right. He was such kind of, and he was the dean of the biggest Nizamiya school in Baghdad. Top scholar of the time. He did two things on the ideological level. One of his first things was what? Exactly what Nizam al-Mulk was intended. He said, let's look at this Ismaili madhab. And Imam al-Ghazali was searching for the truth. He said, I want the truth wherever it is. So maybe the Ismailis are right. Let me study what they say. So he studied the Ismaili madhab. And apparently he came that this is not good. And he wrote a book called Fada'ih al-Batini, the scandal of the Ismailis. This book, he clearly used logic and to clearly show that this is a deviant sect. This was the book that was used by Muslims to counteract at the time Al-Azhar and this message. So Imam al-Ghazali was instrumental in facing the Ismailis. Then he said maybe philosophy. The philosophers of the time used logic in a very bad way. Right? They believe that the philosopher, through logic and clearing his mind, he can too receive ilham and from Allah directly, and he can reach the state of prophet. Weird things, right? So he studied philosophy, and then he wrote a book, The Intent of the Philosophers. And all the philosophers, oh, Imam al-Ghazali, he's a philosopher, he's a great man. Then he wrote another book, The Incoherence of the Philosophers. A big blow for philosophy of the time, right? There was a reply to it, but so he contributed first where? On the intellectual level, right? As this was happening, another twist happened in our story that's actually really interesting. A sub-sect appeared. You know the Ismaili sect? This is a deviant sect. They divided, a sect among the sect appeared. The Ismailis divided, one of them differed with the other, right? And a new sect was formed. The name of this sect, very famous, the young people here will pick. The Assassins. The Assassins, it was real. This is not a fictitious, the Assassin's Creed and all the video games. This is real, right? The Assassins, their name in Arabic is Al-Hashashi, right? So what is the idea behind the Assassins? The founder, you don't have to remember the name, Hassan ibn Sabah, right? He said, you know what? The Ismailis are facing opponents and stuff. I don't need a big army. I don't need to confront my opponent face to face. He had another idea, a new twisted idea. What is it? He used to get young kids, brainwashing, and he would take them and start teaching them about, I'm the Imam, I know the future, right? And then he would give them hashish, to put them in a high state and what have you, right? And then he did something really interesting. In his fort, Qal'at al-Maut, or the Eagle's Nest, right? He had a valley behind it. And, in that valley, he started making artificial rivers of honey, artificial rivers of milk, nice gardens, right? What is he after? So he would get these young kids, deprive them of their dose. And of course, you have, withdrawal symptoms, and and they would tell the kids, pray, make dua for Al-Hassan ibn Sabah, the Imam, and you will get what you want. And the kids would sit and make dua for Al-Hassan ibn Sabah. Then they would give them an overdose. And they would zonk out. They would carry them to that artificial Jannah. And those kids, young men, they would wake up, intoxicated, and they find, oh my God, look at this. Rivers of honey, rivers of milk, servants around, greenery, birds, beautiful, and then they would give them another overdose. They zonk out, they carry them back, and they wake up and they tell them, see, you made dua for Al-Hassan ibn Sabah, you are in Jannah. You get the idea? So they started brainwashing kids in believing so much about the Imam. He used the kids to do something really interesting as they grow up. He told them the arts of assassination. Military fighting and how to assassinate. Then the wicked thing, he would send those assassins everywhere in every single country. And they would pretend to be people. So some of them will come to the masjid, pray in the first row, pretend to be, a righteous person. One of them would go to a church, pretend to be a Christian monk. One of them would go, so they were everywhere, and they intermingled with people. If anybody speaks against the Ismailis, Hassan ibn Sabah would order one of the assassins, kill him. They attempted to kill Salahuddin 3 times. So Salahuddin faced the assassins. As a matter of fact, Salahuddin had a scar on his face. Right? Like he had a scar here. This scar wasn't by the Crusaders. It was one of the assassins that actually attacked him, as we'll see. One of the stories, I'll tell you how serious this is. When this was happening with Salahuddin, he started attacking their forts. Right? And so they sent, let's negotiate. So they sent someone to negotiate with Salahuddin. This is a story, right? So Salahuddin, the assassin came, and he had his personal guards around him, because that's an assassin, right? So the man came, sat in front of Salahuddin, and told him the following: tell your guards to leave, because we want to discuss in person. Salahuddin's response was what? No, they're not leaving. You're an assassin. No way, right? Staying here with me. I trust them. Anything you want to say in front of them. Said, are you sure? Said, yes. The assassin looked at the 2 guards and said, now. The 2 guards unsheathed their sword, pointed it to the neck of Salahuddin Al-Ayubi. The guards of Salahuddin, he was telling, see, they're with us. And if you do not stop attacking us, we'll kill you, your commanders, your leaders, and all your family. See how dangerous the assassins were, right? So now the Hassan ibn Sabah formed this group, and now we have the assassins. Who would be their first target? Who was giving headache to the Ismailis of the time? Nizam al-Mulk. And that is the wazir of the Seljuk Empire. The Seljuk Empire was at the zenith, right? And this was the statesman. So Nizam al-Mulk was a very righteous person. He used to pray all the Sunnah prayers. He loved ilm and loved scholars. Every day he would start his day by giving charity 300 dinars. He'd walk out, start distributing money. If the call of Salah is established, he would stop whatever he's doing and he goes praise. Right? He was such a righteous person, right? Beloved to the Muslims. So one day he's walking out among the poor people, as every day one of them comes to him asking for, and he does this, and the soldiers know him. That's a regular, And that man gets out a poisonous dagger and stabs Nizam al-Mulk, one of the assassins. The last words Nizam al-Mulk said was actually very interesting. As he's being stabbed and he's about to die, he says the following: don't kill him. Don't kill him. I pardon. La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. And he dies. Right? So the assassin killed Nizam al-Mulk. Once that happened, this Seljuk Empire started disintegrating. Over the next 10 years, it divided into 5 different parts. This big empire now started dividing, and we had the situation, Sham is 22 different nations, people are fighting, and we went back to that state again. And it's almost like Hassan ibn Sabah, the founder of the assassins, saying, look, see, I told you so. All what you have to do is what? Get the leader, right? Now they're at this area. The Seljuks are back again to fighting each other, right? It looked like he won, right? Right. So that is the background. So we had now the following situation. The Ismailis, right, are in Egypt. You have Baghdad, under the Seljuks, where the Khalifa is, but the Khalifa is not there. And the Sham area really divided. 22 different nations. The Seljuks Emir are fighting with each other, everybody on his seat. And that was the situation when the Crusaders arrived. This was the state of Muslims, right? Internal turmoil, right? Right. So basically this is a summary, right? So basically the thing to remember, you had Egypt, the Ismailis, right? You have the Seljuk Empire, you have Sham that's divided, and then you have the assassins, right? This is the political situation before the Crusaders. Right. One thing I want to point out, and inshallah we'll be doing through this, is that as we go through the years, the history, marks where the Crusader came, the Battle of Hittin, right? Line of history. I want to show you a line of scholarships. Who was the scholar living at the time? And this is a very interesting diagram because many of us hear names Ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn al-Qayyim, Al-Ghazali. Who lived before who? Who taught who? Who, in what area of time they lived? Because they influenced the political line as well, right? So the timeline we're speaking about, so we had two basic events, the fall of Jerusalem and of course later the Mongols, right? So this is like a map of, from about 450 to 800 Hijri. It shows the first scholar is Imam al-Ghazali. We spoke about him today, right? If you look at the time of Salahuddin, you can draw a line here and say, who were the scholars of his time? Because those were the people that are teaching him, right? You see the idea? And you find names like who? Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, Ibn al-Jawzi, very famous name that we all know about, right? Sheikh Ahmed al-Rifa'i, Abu Madian, right? Al-Hafiz ibn Asakir, the greatest hadith scholar of the time, was the teacher of Salahuddin Al-Ayubi, actually, right? So that's why this is important. I want you to notice something in this line. And I'll just say it, and it's very interesting. Do you notice something here? Look at the yellow. I don't know if you can read it, right? So Imam al-Ghazali. After Imam al-Ghazali, some of the names that start to appear are very interesting names. Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, Sheikh Ahmed al-Rifa'i, and Abu al-Hasan al-Shafii. What is the common line among those three names? They're spiritual masters. Can I say it openly? Tasawwuf. This is the Sufi Turuq. You know the Sufi Tariqas? Apparently, all the Sufi Turuq appeared at this instant. Why? What happened? What was its origin? The way it is today might not be the way the founders were. Those great scholars, Ibn Taymiyyah comes later, as you see. Ibn Taymiyyah writes a book, actually, about tasawwuf, right? And what we learn is that what Ibn Taymiyyah was telling the people of tasawwuf in his days, they were so deviant, dancing and doing things. When you read what he was writing, he's saying, no. The founders, Sheikh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, Sheikh Ahmed al-Rifa'i, kibar shuyukh al-mutaakhirin, those great, they never did what you did. They never danced or twirled around. So he was trying to reform the tasawwuf of his time to return back to its origins, right? But this again, a separate discussion. But this is something to see, like, why did that happen? What was about it? Why was it necessary? Did it affect this generation? And by the way, again, I'm repeating this. Today, when we speak about tasawwuf, we speak about what? And you sit with some, nice sense, and you have some beads, and probably twirl and dance and sing and feel good and go home. This is not at all Sheikh Abdul Qadir. Subhanallah. This is not, tasawwuf is not this way. Tasawwuf is, as he says, it's about two things. As-sidq ma'Allah wa husn al-khuluq ma'al khalq. To be true with Allah, true tawheed, and good character with people. Tasawwuf is about mujahadah. Struggle. Get the dunya out of your heart. Pray as the Prophet prayed. Follow everything in the Sunnah. Give your money. Forgive everybody. It's a very difficult science, right? Here, I'll discuss this later, right? But like, it's interesting why this happened at this time in general, right? Like, we'll continue for maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then I'll give you a break. Is that okay? Right, so we'll have some breaks, 20 minutes break, and then we'll continue. Now, while this is happening in the Muslim area, what is happening in Europe? The arrival of the Franks. Europe at the time, right? And let me say this statement. It's spiritual, but I really think it's a very powerful lesson. This Ibn al-Qayyim says this. He says the following. تالله ما عدا عليك العدو إلا بعد أن تولى عنك الولي فلا تظن أن الشيطان غلب ولكن الولي أعرض. It's a principle. It says if you ever see the Muslims being defeated and under the feet of everybody and being conquered by everybody, and people are stepping on you, and if you see that your enemy is overpowering you and shaitan is, do not think, because how we think, they did this to us, they are, it says no. By Allah, those people, those oppressors did not reach you except that Allah, your wali, the caretaker, the one that defends you. The default is that Allah defends the believers. The default is that Allah will not anyone do that to a Muslim. So if you see somebody conquering Islam and conquering Muslims, the first question is, don't think because that person is powerful. You say, what happened? It must be that Allah lifted his protection. So he's saying what? Never think that it's your enemy that overpowered you. Rather think it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that removed his shields and defense from you. What have we done? You see his idea? If you see yourself defeated, the first question to ask is, why did Allah let this happen? What did I do wrong? Because the default is, I'm the wali of Allah. Allah waliyul ladina amanu, right? This is the default. Like our kids, if you see your son going to put his finger in the in the electric outlet, what would you do? No, don't do that, right? Would you let him? Never, right? If there is a candle and I see my child wants to put his hand in the candle, like I would, no, you will not. He will not be able to do that because I'm his wali. He will never be able to do that. What if I'm sitting there and my son is approaching the candle and I'm looking and he puts his hand and he gets burned? The first question my son should ask is what? How did my dad let me do that? And the answer sometimes is very simple. When I have a son, I keep telling him no, and he says, I will do it. No, I will do it. No, what at the end, what do I do? Khalas. If you insist, I mean, there is no other way for you to learn except, okay, go ahead, put your hand in the outlet, get electrocuted for once, then you'll know, right? Then you know that I'm defending. Sometimes with Allah, say, don't. No, I will. No, I will. No, I will drink. No, I will use riba. No, I will fight with my brother. No, I won't pray. No, I don't. Go ahead, Bismillah. Now let's see what happens to you. Maybe when that happens to you, you return back. You get the idea? So when we speak about the Crusaders, now you understand it's not the power of the Crusaders. Look at the state of the Muslims, right? So in Europe, Europe was now in the Dark Ages, if you will. It was long time ago. It was under the Roman Empire, and the Orthodox Christians. Rome is the city of civilization. That time was gone, right? Now the Catholics entered into a very dark. Europe is divided. It's dark ages in Europe. There is no science. There is no medicine. People are really backward, and their kingdoms, Germany and France, and they're fighting each other. They were very strong in one thing: martial arts. Two things about them: very dedicated. They're Catholics to the teeth. They believe that the Pope is, divinely guided. And Christianity for them was, they're very sincere people, very devout, but very ignorant, right? Who was the strongest man in Europe at the time? Was it Germany, France, Who do you think it was? It was the Pope. The Pope was the strongest man in Europe. Because everybody viewed the Pope as what divinely, if he says something, everybody obeys. If you're a ruler of a country and the Pope doesn't like you, all what he has to do is come and make an edict. I declare by the name of the church and by the name of God, so and so is a heretic. Your people will revolt against you, right? So the Pope was really powerful. The Pope in the time, quickly, he gathered all the kings and gave a very well-known ceremony. It's called it's a historic speech, at Claremont. You can Google it. I have it also, right? He gathered the kings and, the queens and the nobles of Europe. And he gave a lengthy speech. In that speech, the Pope did something different. He started by what? Praising the Franks, the people, that were fighting the Muslims in Spain, and praising all the Catholics. You're the defenders of Christ. You are the defenders of faith. You are, the light of God. You are the children of Christ. He gave them a lot of praise, right? Then he says the following: unfortunately, sad news, disturbing news came from the east, from the city of the Prince of Peace, from Jerusalem. Your Christian brothers in Jerusalem, of course, all lies. And you group of infidels, a race of unclean people, speaking about Muslims, right, appeared, and they are killing your brothers and toying with their heads and slaughtering them at the altars and destroying their churches. And he started saying that the Christians in the East are suffering at the hands of the barbaric Muslims. And this is the city of Christ, the city of Prince of Peace, the city of Jesus. And how can we let the city fall under the infidels? And he appealed to what? You see, the message is appealing to the emotions, because they were devout at the time. They're not like today. Europe today has nothing to do with Christianity. Back in the day, they were so they started crying. And he said, I command you to unite and send a campaign it's time for us to take the city back. The city of Christ should be under us, under the church. We should not leave it to the infidels. You should liberate your brothers and sisters in faith, And then he said, anybody who volunteers, all his sins are forgiven. Heaven is guaranteed for him by me, right? You know how it is in the Catholics, right? And then to add something to sweeten the deal, he said, by the way, I know that your lands here in Europe isn't that great. The weather. And if you went to England, how the weather is, right? He said, I know the situation in Europe is difficult. However, the lands of the East are very fertile. The weather, California compared to Boston, right? So the weather is great, the fruits and the trees and the slush, and it's full of goods. And anybody who goes there, anything he takes is his. You get the idea? He's appealing to the kings, what? You conquer a city, you conquer guess what? You'll become rich. And I, the Pope, will grant you that. So, of course, all the kings now had two motives. The religious motive and what? Yeah, the other motive of war, unfortunately. That oftentimes gets covered with democracy. At the time it was covered with religion, right? But there is this wealth and status, right? So a great campaign started forming. And people started crying, a campaign formed. The first campaign, a man by the name of, the first campaign? Peter the Hermit. Notice the word, Peter the Hermit, not a scholar. But what? A righteous person, a devout person, a person that's able to articulate words so good. He started preaching words of fire. Some people, they're not scholars, but they're very good when it comes to what? Delivering. They're very emotional, very passionate. They appeal to the emotions of people. You attend, you start crying, right? The state. He was one of those people. And he started preaching about Christ and the church and the miracles and how they were back in the day, and people sacrificed for Christianity, and where are you? And with the call of the Pope, and God awaits you, and and we will go, and if we unite under Christ, miracles will happen. We will be winning. We will win under God. Nobody can stand against us. Some Muslims have the same way, Peter the Hermit, right? He's not saying anything wrong, right? But he said something really strange. He said, what's important is faith. What's important is purity. Correct. Nothing wrong. He said, therefore, the most pure of people should join this campaign. I want people with very minimum sins, because it's our sins that makes us defeated. Looks nice, right? And then he says what? Who are the people that are the purest of the pure? Children. So send your children, because the children, we'll put them on the front line, and if they go, miracles will happen, and walls will fall, and we'll be victorious. God will, And guess what happened? People followed. Farmers, peasants, a huge number. Kids, women, everybody joined in a huge campaign, right? Formed under Peter the Hermit, and they started heading towards Asia Minor, and they landed. The first crusade happened, and of course the Seljuks there received the news. A bunch of people, hundreds of thousands, landed, and so what do you think the Seljuks did? They gathered their army, and they faced the first crusade. What do you think happened to them? It's obvious, right? They're very devout, they're very sincere, they pray a lot. What's their mistake? I hope you see, because sometimes some Muslims follow this Peter the Hermit. You're not trained, you're not organized, you're not prepared, you will lose. I know you're truthful, I know you're quoting ayahs from the Quran, but you did not prepare at all. Right? So what happened? The Seljuks destroyed it. And of course, the Seljuks of the time, it's a good opportunity. All those kids, sell them as slaves in the market. That's where they ended up, right? But something else happened. Now the Seljuk got a false impression. Very interesting. So now the Seljuks in their head was what? When you say a crusade, what are they thinking? Again, those foolish people, those fanatical, crazy people that don't know what they're doing. They're fanatics. They're very sincere. In the battlefield, they run at you, right? They run to be killed. They're not trained, right? So he said, okay, the Crusaders became something what? Very trivial in his head. Interestingly, that had an impact, because now the real Crusaders came. The armies of Europe gathered. Took time, from everywhere. And a huge army, more than 100,000 at least, if not more, much more, gathered, and they indeed landed, and I'm going to go quick, landed in Asia Minor. At the time, the very first encounter was the city of Nicaea, right? So again, this is the map, right? They land. The first encounter, the city of Nicaea. I won't say the name of the ruler at the time. He wasn't in his city. He was fighting with another emir, and news came to him. There is a new group of those crusaders that landed and heading for your city. And he said, okay, I'll deal with them later. And then news came to him, they besiege your city. So he went to the other guy and told him, okay, let's have a truce for now. Let me go finish this business and then we'll return back to our, quarrel, right? And he goes back to his city and he was absolutely shocked. Because what he saw was not the First Crusade. He saw an organized military. And he saw something that Muslims weren't familiar with. They used to fight the Romans. Those are not the Romans. Those are European knights. They look different. Have you seen a European knight before? The armor from head to toe, very strong, very big, long sword, right? Armed like to the teeth, right? And there's hundreds of thousands of them, and all of them has a cross, right? And they're very dedicated, very devout, and they're all over his city, hundreds of thousands, and dressed in, by the way, like for the kids here, have you ever seen a helmet of a Templar? This is a real one, right? And if you want, I'll leave it here. You can come and wear it and take pictures, And tomorrow I have even an armor. We'll get a sword, and, you can have fun with it, right? But Muslims didn't see that before, right? And they're all dressed in iron, their horse in iron, and the man, what do? He ordered the city to surrender, right? I can't do anything by myself. And then he ran to the guy that he was fighting. And he said, listen, there is a problem. And they came for me, you're next. So it's in our best interest to do what? Join forces to fight them, right? And he agreed. So they joined forces and they said, let's lay a trap for them. The Seljuks were excellent archers, right? They used to ride their horses, and the art of archery. Some scholars, they wondered, because they throw arrows for a very long distance. One of the techniques they used, they have this long bow, and they would sit on the ground, put their legs up, hold the bow with their legs, and pull back with their body. Can you imagine it? Do you imagine how big the bow is? You don't do this. See, the distance is small. But if you sit, once I said this, my son was 8 years old. And he heard the lecture. I go back home, and I found him sitting on the ground with his bow. Baba, look, right? I'm like the Seljuks, and they raise their legs. Can you imagine a cannon, right? Pull their body, and you throw their arrows, right? They're also used to ride their horses. Their favorite method. When they attack, they would ride their horses, and it's almost like a machine gun. While they're riding, they aim and fire an array of arrows, right? Decimate their opponents, right? So the Seljuk said, let's do that. One of our traps. They picked, the place is Dur al-Yum. It's a valley with 2 hills. And they hid all their archers and horses. And they said, once they come in the valley, we just raid them. And they waited, and an army appeared. And they said, it's a huge army, and it seems they're entering the valley. They're entering into and they commanded their archers launch an array of arrows. And it was very effective. In the beginning, lots of people died. But soon enough, the Crusaders, sluggish as they were, heavy, they did their favorite technique, started gathering, formed an iron wall with the armed people outside, their shields, their helmets, and all of a sudden, the arrows are not effective anymore. And it's time for hand-to-hand combat. And the Seljuks was like, should we not? They look strong. Should we actually engage them in hand-to-hand combat? As they're debating, they look into the horizon. To the right side, another army appears. They look to the left side, another Crusader army appears. What's going on? The part, what they thought to be the army of the Crusaders was the vanguard. It was not the whole army. And all of a sudden, they started getting surrounded. At this point, what was their strategy? They said, we have only one advantage left. What do you think that is? The Arabian horse is very fast. Anybody who knows horses, right? The European horse, the Arabian horse, right? Very intelligent, very smart, very fast. We can outrun them, right? But what about the infantry? Every man for himself. So sorry for the infantry. You don't have a horse. And all Qilj Arsalan, the leaders, took their horses, their knights, and ran. The infantry were left to a slaughter. The battle of Dur al-Yum ended up in a slaughter. Muslims were heavily defeated in that battle. The worst part is the message that they started spreading. As they're running away, now they started spreading what? Hundreds of thousands of warriors, too powerful, too strong. The ayah from the Quran. كلما جاءهم أمر من الأمن أو الخوف أذاعوا به. Please learn this lesson. Allah speaks about what? Sometimes we receive news that are, something bad happened. What do we do? Go to Facebook, go to Instagram. Please do not spread bad news. You're spreading fear among other people. You know, one situation that happened in Mission Viejo like 5 years ago, the days of ISIS, one of those terrorist attacks happened, right? And everybody's afraid, and it was Ramadan, and then Fajr time, I'm going to the masjid, and I see police cars surrounding the masjid with the dogs and bomb squad, and you're not allowed to come. What happened? There is a bomb in the masjid, Mission Viejo, CIF. It's like, what? You have to pray like elsewhere. What happened? Right? And everybody's afraid, what? Like, you know. And then the police discovered, oh, it's not a bomb. What happened was the following. We discovered that from the cameras. In Taraweeh, the kids were playing, and there was a box with wires in it. So they got it out of the trash can. They started playing with it. At the end of the night, they didn't know what to do with it. So they put all the wires in that box and left it at the door of the masjid. And the police at 2 a.m., look at this, was wanting to make sure that the Muslims are okay. They passed by and saw the box. Oh, that might be a bomb, and you know how they work. And so, alhamdulillah. But guess what happened? The Muslims saw that. What do you think the Muslims did at the Salat al-Fajr? Everybody got out his phone. What's happening next is what? Picture, 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 picture. Then what? Immediately? I got messages from Egypt. Are you okay? Your masjid are being bombed. I'm like, yahi, nothing happened, right? You got the idea? Please do not spread fear among people. As a matter of fact, it's the opposite. Shouldn't we saying, don't you see that the police was taking care of us? Instead of seeing the bomb, didn't you see that we're safe? Shouldn't we be thanking the police instead of spreading, you know? But that happened. News started spreading about those warriors. I'll go fast here because of the lack of time, unfortunately. I won't go into the details. But eventually they went to the city of Antakya, right? And I want you to notice one thing. At the time, there is 3 cities that are important. The capital, Damascus, Aleppo, and Al-Mosul. Those 3 cities were under 3 different rulers, right? And I'll describe one of them later, Ridwan. But in any case, they started sieging the city of Antakya, right? The ruler of Antakya sought help from Aleppo, from Damascus, from Al-Mosul. And I'm going quick here. I'm not going to describe the battles. The 3 armies were defeated. The army of Aleppo came, you know, to help. And as they're coming, they encountered, the Franks were sending people to, you know, forage and, you know, seek some sustenance. And so as the Muslim army of Aleppo was moving, they encountered a group of knights. And they were hesitant, attack, not attack. The knights attacked the Aleppo army, and the Aleppo army just got defeated by a handful of knights, right? Which was miserable, right? So they defeated the army from Aleppo, they defeated the army from Damascus that came to help, and they defeated the army that came from Al-Mosul as well. 3 battles, right? And I'm not giving the details here, unfortunately, because of the time, right? Eventually, the city of Antakya fell to them. When the city of Antakya fell to them, they entered the city. Every man, woman, kid, everybody was slaughtered. Hundreds of thousands of Muslims, they spared no one. And the news spread. Those crusaders, those Franks are powerful, strong, they spare nobody, right? And the interesting thing, nobody knew at the time what's their objective, which is very interesting. An army like this forms, you know, a speech was given by the Pope, and the Muslims up till now, they don't know who are those people, what do they want? Which tells us no intelligence whatsoever, you know, no spying, very negative, right? Anyway, their next stop. Now they started to know, like, again, I'll tell you something interesting here. It's interesting. When the city of Antakya was captured, what do you think the Egyptians did, the Ismailis? The Ismailis are watching this. The Seljuks are fighting against the Franks, 3-4 different battles. They're being defeated. They did 2 things. The first, they sent an army. Where do you think the army is heading? No, Baghdad is too far. The army, of course, is not to help the Muslims. What is the nearest city you can see on the map that's important? Jerusalem. They said a good opportunity. The Seljuks are busy in the north. Jerusalem is not defended. Send an army. They send an Ismaili army, attack Jerusalem, take Jerusalem back from the Seljuks. That was their first point. The second, they sent a letter to the Franks, congratulating them on their victories and telling them, great, that's good. You have Shem, we have Egypt, let's have a truce, and the common enemy is the Seljuks. The response of the Franks was one statement. What about Jerusalem? Now the Muslims realized the Franks are coming for Jerusalem. Once that happened, a very interesting thing happened. All the cities on the coast, Beirut, Saida, Akka, Haifa, Alhamdulillah, those Franks are not coming for me. They're coming for who? Jerusalem. So what should we do? Normalization, if you will. It's like, khalas, right? One of the cities that the Franks took on the way, a small city by the name of Ma'arra. Right? It's a very small city. And the Franks sieged the city, and the people of Ma'arra were scared. They sent to the Franks, they said, you know what, if we were to deliver the city for you, would you spare us? And they said, of course, if you were to open the gates and deliver the city for us, we give you our word. Everybody you will be good, you can go with your money, it will be done. And they trusted. And they opened the gates. Once the Franks entered the city of Ma'arra, because their view was, مَا عَلَيْنَا فِي الْأُمِّيِّينَ سَبِيلٌ. As the Quran says, a word to an infidel is not a word. So they entered the city of Ma'arra, closed the doors, slaughtered and killed everybody in the city. It was a slaughter in the city of Ma'arra. Killed everybody, took everything for themselves, and took the city of Ma'arra. But in the city of Ma'arra, something that haunted Muslims for decades happened. And this is not by the Muslim account. This is by the Christian account. The Franks wrote letters to the Pope, telling them about what they did in the city of Ma'arra. This is them, not us. And I want you just read this. They say, in the city of Ma'arra, we boiled the adult pagans in giant pots. We paled their children on spits of fire and devoured their flesh. They ate Muslims. Cannibalism. Why am I? Is it that bad today? We face bad enemies, don't get me wrong. I don't think we were not eaten yet. Allah protect all of us. But this is how bad it was. Now I want you to imagine the psychological impact on Muslims of the day. They were, oh my God, those are beasts. Strong, powerful, devoted, they fight crazy, right? They're well armed, they're organized, they're so dedicated, right? What? And then all the cities, after the city of Ma'arra, everybody started doing what? You want Jerusalem? They started sending guides, food, wine, horses. Leave me, as long as I stay on my seat, please go. Get the idea? Because many Muslims, we see that. As long as I'm good, please pass. Kill the other people, it's okay. It's not my city, we're good. Right? And eventually, they go to the city of Jerusalem. Now, what happened when the Franks saw the city of Jerusalem? Very interesting. It's reported. The first wave, people went crazy. So for the first week, they started, remember, those are very fanatic, jealous and very sincere, devout people. So the first week, they said the army started attacking with no ladders. They just started climbing the wall with their hands, And of course, the Egyptians, the Ismaili army just got rid of them. It's crazy. But soon enough, they started to form siege equipment, right? And they formed siege towers. And after 40 days, their siege tower came to the wall of Jerusalem. And they succeeded in breaching the wall of Jerusalem. Once that happened, what happened in Jerusalem was a nightmare. This is the city of the Prince of Peace, the city of Christ, the city that you came to free from the infidels. They poured inside the city in a fanatical way. They started killing everybody. Muslims rushed to the Aqsa Mosque. The Jews rushed to the Jews. Yeah, the Jews were living with the Muslims, by the way, and they defended the city. See, we live together, right? Under the Muslims, right? The Jews rushed to their synagogue. The Franks, the Crusaders, surrounded their synagogue, got wood, burned all the Jews alive in their synagogue. The Muslims ran to the Aqsa Mosque. The Franks went into the Aqsa Mosque, the knights, with their horses, closed the doors. By their own narration, right? Ibn al-Athir says 70,000 Muslims were killed in the Aqsa Mosque. Others say 60,000, others at least 30,000. The Franks say, their letter, in the temple, in the Aqsa Mosque, we killed in one day at least more than 10,000 infidels. And as you can see, the blood of the infidels were to the knees of our horses. And they said after 1 week of killing, we had to stop the stench. They killed everybody in the city of Jerusalem. Today, we see terrible things. What, 25,000 people killed back in the day. I don't want to say the description of what they did. I just mentioned one thing. Babies, they used to get a baby. I don't know, humans, will take a baby and then they smash the head. They did terrible things, right? The followers of Christ, in the name of Jesus, peace be upon him. How can religious people that believe in Jesus, peace be upon him? I understand that you believe in Jesus and you want to take the city of Jerusalem, but this killing babies, what humans are capable of doing is amazing. When you see what's happening today, it's not the first time. The thing is, how can humans reach that level? To the extent I've met people that when you read the Quran and you read about hellfire, why hell? Sometimes you look at us and say, you know what? There are some people that actually, that's why hell was created. Because I don't care how can you kill a baby? How can you do this to a baby? It's a baby, for God's sake. How can any human with a heart do something like that? It's unimaginable. And then laugh about it and normal and keep doing it and brag about it and send to the Pope about it and not caring and killing everybody. What? And in the name of religion on top of that? Today, what's the same thing? Back in the day, it was in the name of the cross. It's our land according to the Bible. What is being said today? In the name of what? In the name of Musa? In the name of Sulaiman? In the name of Dawood? You think they'll be happy with this? You think Allah's happy with this? It's wrong. It's terrible. I don't know what kind of humans are really. It's the nafs, shaitani nafs. It's all when the heart becomes dark, humans are worse than shaitan. Really, right? Subhanallah. And we have that ability in us, subhanallah. But they did terrible things in Jerusalem. The response, and I'll finish in 5 minutes, the response. The Qadi of Jerusalem, Al-Harawi, succeeds in escaping. And he was so mortified with what happened. He decided to go to Baghdad, to the Khalifa himself. And he goes to the city of Baghdad. That's the Qadi. He enters the city of Baghdad. He's a traveler. It was the month of Ramadan. He's traveling, right? So people don't know that. So he went into the marketplace and started eating. And the people were like, what? Ramadan? A person eating in the marketplace? How dare you? Police, arrest this man. How dare you? And people started gathering. And they were upset. The holiness of the month of Ramadan. How can you do that? And then this is the Qadi, judge, eloquent. He started making poetry. He said basically about what? You're upset that I violated Ramadan, and you're not upset that Muslim men, women, and children in the city of Jerusalem. And he started telling people about what happened. Everybody was in tears. And everybody gathered, big demonstration. And they headed to the palace, to the Khalifa. Harawi enters to the Khalifa, to the court. This is Al-Qadi Harawi. And he starts saying poetry about Jerusalem and what happened and what the Muslims faced. 1,000 years ago version of Instagram and TikTok, and because they didn't have that, right? So he started describing. Everybody was in tears. And the Khalifa declares, jihad. We have to fight. Everybody is upset, right? What do you think happened next? Nothing. Exactly. Nothing. Big demonstrations, nothing happened. There is something I call the Coca-Cola response. And please, let's not do that. What is the Coca-Cola response? A bottle of Coke, you shake it, fizz happens, right? And then what? You shake it again, same response happens. It's a lot of mess. It causes a lot of mess, but it's really nothing. So what happened back then? Massive demonstrations. Massive demonstrations. Maybe they burned some flags, I don't know, I'm just joking. But then when it's time for action, it's time to do, it's time to spend your money. This is not an easy thing. It's time to spend 50% of Salahuddin. When he died, the Sultan of Egypt and Sham, he did not have enough money for his own body. All his money was spent for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what it takes for people to liberate. All his life, the Sultan of Egypt and Sham did not have to pay zakah for 1 year. Now, what does that mean? What's the condition for us to pay zakah? Nisab, that you have to save money. He had such a great income. He never saved more than $1,000 for a single year. All of it. When in the Battle of Akka alone, Salahuddin donated 12,000 horses. His people, his commanders are the same like him. His wife, the same like him. We'll see. This is what it takes. This is the real. Do you mean what you're saying? Do you mean that? Are you okay with doing something for Jerusalem? What's your income today? Can you donate 20% of your income every single month for Jerusalem? No. I live in a 4-bedroom house. Can you live in a 2-bedroom house? And with the difference? No. Am I truthful? I'm speaking to myself. I say I'm angry, and I know I'm angry. But unless I'm able to sacrifice, this is why nothing happens. You get the idea? And this is what scholars saw. Right? So the response from Egypt, the Ismaili Khalifa was upset. They took Jerusalem. So he sends a message telling them to leave immediately. Gathers an Egyptian army. Some say 100,000. The least estimate is 20,000. But it's 100,000 of his soldiers. Massive force. Go liberate Jerusalem. Right? And the Egyptian army, and by the way, this Egyptian army, the army did not have even siege equipment, which is very interesting. So what are you? It's very interesting, right? So he sends all the army of Egypt. The response of the Franks, they sent 10,000. And you can see the numbers, 1,200 knights, 8,000 men. To meet maybe 50,000 of the Battle of Asqalan happens. And in the Battle of Asqalan, in few hours, the entire army of Egypt was defeated. The commander had to flee by sea. More than 60% of the army was killed. And you can see that it wasn't the lack of numbers, not the lack of resources. What is going on with the Muslims? Do you see the idea? We today, we think we're helpless. Really? You know how much wealth we have? You know how much numbers and power and strength and armies? What's wrong? It's not the lack of resources. It's something else in the heart. And that's what the scholars of the time will speak about. Imam al-Ghazali was present when this happened. He lived in that time. And we'll discuss next the transformation. What happens? How can we change from this reality, right? One thing I'll leave you with, and we'll stop after that. All the cities that helped the Crusaders. You think after the Crusaders took Jerusalem, what do you think happened to them? Akka, Saida, Beirut, Tripoli. You think the Crusaders left them alone? Systematically, one after the other was attacked. And eventually, this situation happened. The Franks took all the cities in the coast. And now we had a situation. The Franks have the city of Jerusalem. All the coastal cities fell to them. Why the cities on the coast? Well, through the sea, you can get reinforcements from Europe, right? And then a new equilibrium happened. You had Damascus with its ruler, Aleppo with its ruler, and then Mosul with its ruler, right? And then they viewed the Franks as what? Hey, we can coexist. It's a new player in the area. It's not that bad. You get the idea? And for the next decades, that's what happened. How will things change? That's we'll find out, inshallah. Let's take a break for 15 minutes. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for your patience. And inshallah, we'll come back and see how things, the positive side, inshallah. Jazakumullah.